A reading from Psalm 100. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before his presence with singing. Know ye that the Lord, he is God. It is he that hath made us, and not we ourselves. We are his people, and the sheep of his pasture. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving, and into his courts with praise. Be thankful unto him, and bless his name. For the Lord is good, and his mercy is everlasting, and his truth endureth to all generations. Let us pray. O Lord our God, how excellent is your name in all the earth. Our God and our Father, we are so thankful and we are grateful that you have spared our life to see another day. And in this season of Thanksgiving, we have so much to be thankful for. Millions didn't make it. You woke us up this morning. You clothed us in our right mind. We are here not on our own strength, but we are standing here on your strength, clothed in our right mind. We have all our faculties. We can move in you. And so, Lord, because today and this month is a Thanksgiving time, we say thank you for all that you have done and all that you are getting ready to do. We pray now, God, that you will continue to lead, guide, and direct our path. Father, because we realize that without you, we are nothing. We'll be nothing. We'll have nothing, and we'll sound like nothing. Your word declares that if we acknowledge you, you will direct our path. And so, sovereign God, almighty God, everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace, the God who speaks and man lives and dies, we pray, God, for our government. We ask that you continue, Lord, to keep your hands upon us. Lead us and guide us, God, in the right direction. Wisdom, knowledge, and understanding we cannot acquire from a book, but we know it's you who give it to us. We pray, God, that you will continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Guide us, God, through these turbulent times. In the darkness, God, be our light, be our shield, our buckler, and our guide. We pray, God, and as you continue to steer us in the right direction, we pray that all that we need, all that we desire for this country, we pray, God, for persons who are still, God, looking to you, Abacunians, the Grand Bahamians, God, who still need your intervention to assist, God, to rebuild their lives. We ask that you mend their broken hearts and their spirit. And for this, we say thank you, because everything that we need, you will provide. And you have taught us to pray, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, your will be done on earth
as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us
our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, power, and glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Good morning, honorable members. At this time, we shall continue our debate. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Southern Shores.
Speaker, I just wish to advise that last evening, the member for Golden Isles would have reserved. However, he is unable to be here. He had travel plans, and so the member for Yamoussoukro will continue.
Thank you, honorable member. The chair now recognizes the honorable member for Yamoussoukro.
May it please you, Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the good people of the constituency of Yamacraw to add our voice to this debate on the proposed bill, that is the electricity rate reduction bond. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, before I begin, and I will end as such, I want to thank the Honorable Prime Minister for reposing, and the people of the good people of the Bahamas for reposing the confidence in me to appoint me as Minister of Financial Services, Trade, Industry, and Immigration. Mr. Speaker, recently I've had the good fortune on behalf of the Bahamian people to travel to various countries to promote the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth industries of the Bahamas. And I'll say why I say that, Mr. Speaker, is because even though financial services is one of the pillars that we concentrate on at the Ministry of Financial Services, we also concentrate on trade and industry. And almost everything that we do in this country, this democratic, sovereign and democratic country, is based on trade and industry. And Mr. Speaker, what we said in New York or Brazil or Brussels or recently in Dubai, where they said within the next 10 years, more than $1 trillion, more than $1 trillion will pass from one generation to the next. In a country where they say within the next year, they're gonna have everything crystallized in blockchain and that they're going paperless. But what we told them, Mr. Speaker, was that the Bahamas, or is that the Bahamas is the clear choice. And we sold to the world innovation, expertise, and location. And Mr. Speaker, since taking office, I've spoken to industry and told them that we're taking a tripartite approach. Government, and that has always been the approach, government, industry, civil society, and Bahamians in the international diaspora to be a part of the process of constructing or continuing to construct a financial services industry second to none. One of the things that industry partners have said, Mr. Speaker, and what we did, I want to just make mention of Latin America. We know that there's some upheaval in Latin America. Venezuela, it was strange to see so many Brazilians wanting to relocate their assets, going to Dubai, to see so many persons looking at the Bahamas as the clear choice as to where they will reinvest, not just live, bring their families, bring their financial advisors to live, work, and play within the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. But Mr. Speaker, as we sold the Bahamas, what was interesting is you had competent, innovative, highly intelligent Bahamians who traveled with us from both sides of the political divide, Mr. Speaker. And they did an excellent job. One of the things that was highlighted when we met with the Pictet Bank, I want to just highlight one of the honorable members who once served here, a brilliant young Bahamian in Mr. Kalis Road. He now represents his principals here in the Bahamas. They're doing some phenomenal work on Paradise Island, and they're looking to go into the Family Island. One of the things that various entities identify is the consistency and efficiency with which we are able to provide power in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And if we're selling the jurisdiction as the clear choice, if we are advertising and selling innovation, expertise, and location, they said this is a part of it. And it has to be consistent. Mr. Speaker, as I did my research for this presentation today, I went back, and I'm not going to quote, but I will quote some person. I've seen that BPL has represented somewhat of a difficulty, and I want to commend the member for Carmichael for his objectivity in making his presentation, because he did not deny the fact that successive governments were not as diligent as they should have been in the way that we do business in terms of the provision of power in the Bahamas. Not only have the governments not been as diligent, Mr. Speaker, as they should have been, I want to suggest that Bahamians have not been as diligent as we should have been. You know, not every so often, when I'm not traveling, I go to Yamakro, and every Monday, I hold office hours. And if you're able to get up very early in the morning, you can see me at 8 o'clock, between 8 and 8:30, and they take advantage of it. But it's interesting to see sometimes persons providing electricity bills when both governments in the past would have given a moratorium and say, listen, just turn on all the lights. And when you look at their passports, they're traveling. When you look at the clothes that they wear, they're some of the most expensive. When you look at the way that we arrange our finances, it leaves a lot to be desired. So I say all that to say, Mr. Speaker, that perhaps we've been, as a people, a little lackluster in the way we treat with how we are to service our bills. Then there are the major companies and even the government corporations. And you heard Mr. Bannister giving, and I will refer to that, a historical overview of the provision of power in the Bahamas and how some persons have fallen down on their duties. Mr. Speaker, when I go in the evening, I'm extremely honest with persons, especially young people. I had an opportunity to meet with a young man, and I said to him, you know, one of the last things I had expected in coming into politics is that it would appear as if I'm an employment agency. Hardly nobody wants to go into the private sector. So I said to him, what about construction? He says, no, Mr. Johnson, I suffer from migraines. I say, you got a young lady that you lay up next and you got 3 children? Let's have a serious conversation here. You've got to be crazy. And so I think in order for us to fully participate in the economic environment in the Bahamas, I think the chickens have to come home to roost. And there are some things that governments can do better. There's some things that we as a people can do better to resolve this whole issue of power. So, Mr. Speaker, I crave your indulgence just to make mention of a few items before I go back into my presentation this morning. Just to identify some issues in the relevant to Yamakro. But this one is relevant to the entire Bahamas. I call this gentleman my beloved professor, the late Mr. Felix Bethel, who passed recently. A distinguished gentleman, excellent citizen, with a heart for social justice, who taught within the educational system for more than 45 years, passed as a result of health complications. So on behalf of my family, I would like to extend condolences to the family of Mr. Felix Bethel, his beloved children, and the education community on his passing. He was different, Mr. Speaker. He did not choose his words. And like the old people say, he did not dance to music that he didn't like. And so we pray that his soul rest in peace. I would like to congratulate Ms. Sheffley and Wala and the Zonta Club for the work that they have done to highlight violence against women and to join with them in their efforts. Mr. Speaker, this weekend on Saturday, the Correctional Services Department will be holding their ball, and Yamakro has decided to purchase 2 tables. I'll tell you why. They were a significant part of the Yamakro Community Correctional Services Partnership, where low-risk prisoners or inmates, sorry, came into the community, and we were able to clear just over 2 acres of property. And the result of that, Mr. Speaker, is a nature trail that the uh, National Trust is looking at adopting. We've been able to produce one of the largest backyard farming projects in New Providence. But now we have pumpkin, banana, peas, and corn. And to add with that, there was soursop and a number of other local Bahamian sugar apple, yeah, sugar cane, bananas. And it was interesting, our watermelon wines really came in good. And our pumpkins are looking very nice. And so the persons are taking advantage of that. So to all persons who are available on this weekend, and now, Mr. Speaker, it is our turn to go in to the prison, to the correctional facility, to provide services to that institution. And so we're looking forward to that, Mr. Speaker. My good friends, who my father said adopted me, trained me, and assisted me, is having a night under the stars. That is the Royal Bahamas Police Force on the 13th of December, and then a boat cruise on my birthday. That's the 7th of December. I'm asking everybody to come out and to support them. Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier, the role of the Bahamas BPL is significant. We fully appreciate, and as I said, I did my historical overview of BPL, and I saw and I listened to what Mr. Bannister had to say, Carmichael, in giving the historical overview of BPL. I diplomatically touched on what is the obligation of the Bahamian people, the governments of the Bahamas, in running BPL like a business. And it's rather unfortunate in coming into government, Mr. Speaker, that hardly anything is run like a business. Hardly anything is run like a business. And that includes BPL. But I would like to commend the minister for his work in forcefully putting together a team that is seeking to remediate the difficulties that are now existent at BPL. I was able to look at all of the presentations or media presentations made by Cat Island, Rumkins, and Salvador over the years in terms of the electricity rate reduction bonds, particularly in 2015, Mr. Speaker. And one of the interesting things that was promised in 2015, and I quote from an article from The Guardian, when there was
give the date, please.
Pardon me?
The date.
The date, I'll give it to you, Mr. Speaker. Just pray with that indulgence for a moment. '24th of November, 2015, Mr. Speaker. Then borrowing the sum of $600 million to finance the bond for BEC restructuring. It was concluded that the borrowing, and it says, David said that the move will cause the reduction in both the ongoing debt service charge and tariff rates for customers and consumers, while at the same time giving birth to a BPL with a clean balance sheet and increased borrowing power. The separation from BEC legacy debt will, he said, allow BPL to invest in new, more efficient equipment and processes. And Mr. Speaker, we heard from Mr. Bannister, and nobody refuted it, that we have 2 generators that were bought in 1960, 4 in 82, 2 in 92, one in 99, one in 2001, one in 2003, two in 2004, one 2005, one in 2006, etc. Mr. Speaker, we now have the point that's coming online. Well, Albany is trying its best to assist. We now have Bahama that's coming online, and any number of developments. And Mr. Speaker, why I said that we've been inviting persons from far and near to come and set up in the Bahamas is because of the instability in the world. We would be shocked and amazed at the number of persons who are now applying to come to the Bahamas to live and work, and investors that want to come to the Bahamas and set up. But we have a dire need for proper and efficient power supply. And Mr. Speaker, a system that was perhaps developed years ago, there's been very little on this until this time to remediate and replace engines that were dated for the 1960s. It makes absolutely no sense, Mr. Speaker. And so today we come to the Bahamian people to say that we need to invest in renewable energies. We've indicated what will be spent in some of the family islands, Ragged Island, Eleuthera, in terms of renewable energy and clean energy. On coming into government, Mr. Speaker, any number of reports that have been laid before this House. One in particular was the circumstances existent at Clifton Pier, where at some points you had more than 30 foot of fuel in the ground. And it would appear as if we were just purchasing fuel to go into outdated, leaking generators. And so you could not fault the person who was selling you the fuel. It was an excellent deal. As much as you want, I will give to you. Because at the end of the day, it was a profit. But how efficient was the system producing the power supply for the Bahamas? Extremely underrated, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, we're here today to request, pardon? Mr. Speaker, we're here today to debate this act to borrow or to facilitate some $600 million, half of which, Mr. Speaker, is legacy debt, rollover debt. Mr. Speaker, I've heard all that was said by Cat Island, Pine Ridge, Exuma, in South and Central Andros. But the reality, Mr. Speaker, is that we have to resolve this issue. We have to come together as a people and as a government to deal with this, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Free National Movement has enjoyed a very fruitful legacy in providing power in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. In 1992, it was the Free National Movement that started to electrify the island. And very little has been done in terms by the Progressive Liberal Party in addressing this issue. As I said earlier, I grew up on Cat Island, and we lived by lamp. It was only after 1992 that the workmen came in and put in the poles. I want to congratulate Long Island for, he says to me that he's soon to be in Cat Island to lay the pipe, which water will flow through. And so that we've started to do this. But what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, is that our first and second industry is dependent on the quality of power that we could provide to this country. I want to commend the Minister for the MP for Carmichael and Minister of Works for introducing safe and environmentally friendly electricity, power. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to support this legislation. Yamacross supports this legislation. But I just want to encourage, Mr. Speaker, in my short presentation, a greater commitment by both governments. I want to invite a greater commitment by the Bahamian people to be more diligent in the way that we conduct our affairs. And that rather than traveling to Miami, sometimes I drive around, you see every eatery is filled. The person's purchasing food. That we should be much more prudent and concentrate on the things that matter, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I complete my presentation, I just would like to make one observation. I know that in the provision of electricity, I want to commend the Minister for Works for identifying those persons who might have illegally taken electrical supply. And there was one community in particular where we discovered all sorts of generators and open wiring. And so that is something that we have to deal with and that we're going to continue to deal with. Persons who illegally connect themselves to the grid. The other thing that we have to do, Mr. Speaker, is for these persons who, I don't understand how communities with buildings that do not meet certain standards are able to have BPL electrical supplies hooked up to them almost all across, especially in New Providence. That has to stop, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to address one issue before I sit, and that is the whole issue of the government of the Bahamas and its treatment of the immigration matters. I cannot say it any more, any better than the Prime Minister said, and that is we are a country of laws, governed by the rule of law, respecting international best practices. And as Mr. Speaker, we were careful to craft the message. And I say, as I said earlier, even the international human rights groupings have not found fault with us. Neither colleagues from the other side. But we have to respect human dignity. Mr. Speaker, but there's one difficulty, and if there are any legitimate complaints, we invite those complaints, Mr. Speaker. We invite them to the Immigration Department. If they are of a criminal nature, we invite persons to go to the police. And if you think that you have a civil or criminal claim, our courts have proven themselves to give decisions even against the government of the Bahamas. But what we say, Mr. Speaker, is there are any number of frivolous and unfounded complaints that are being made. And that we would invite all on sundry, that when they find that this is the case, that they would encourage persons to cease and desist, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I decided to copy some photos that I got. It says, it simply just is not right. There's a man with a baton beating another man. And when you look at this photo in the background, you would realize very quickly that this did not happen in the Bahamas. Not to mention when they say that persons are burning people in the Bahamas. It didn't happen in the Bahamas. We know many white people we have, or any white persons we have in the police force. That it is illegal for immigration to break down your windows and doors. That is partially correct, but if they are armed with a search warrant and you refuse to obey that warrant, they have certain authority. But this picture wasn't taken in the Bahamas. but was put out, and to the reasonable, objective, uninformed observer, they would think that it happened in the Bahamas. You do not have to answer questions about whether you do or don't have status. That is partially correct. With the Immigration Department and police officers empowered with the powers, especially the Immigration Department, is with the powers of a police officer to investigate matters. And if they have reasonable cause to suspect that you're not here properly, they can take you into custody. They have the power to charge, take you before the court, and prosecute you. But there's a bloodied lady who was not taken in the Bahamas, Mr. Speaker. There's this next picture with a man with a pistol, an attack dog, and a gentleman being attacked. And if one looks at this picture and it says it is illegal for immigration to hunt you with vicious dogs. Well, this one wasn't taken in the Bahamas. So anybody looking at this photo would think that it happened. And I asked one of the proponents of these photos, I said, why did you do that? They said it was for sensationalism. I said, that's not sensationalizing something. That's being completely dishonest. Now, for a country that depends on tourism, financial services, and for persons to come and live and work, what does that do when persons see what is a lie being perpetrated? It almost has the potential to destabilize these industries. I outlined the story of a young man who went about saying that the people and government of Bahamas were abusing persons at the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Nothing could be further from the truth, because I had the responsibility to go to all the shelters and give out my numbers. I was there on that night. I was there when social services staff came, spoke to the Minister of National Security. He said they're going to take care of security, and they did do that. There was no responsibility on the part of that church, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, to provide anything other than the building, space. And we called them at the 11th hour. Two distinguished gentlemen came and opened the building. But then you had someone going around the world saying what we were doing. It is these types of matters that we want all of the international members in the international community to dissuade persons not to do. Is just simply dishonest. But led by the most honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Hubert Minnis, we say that in accordance with the law and rule of law, if you know of anybody that's being abused, please get the information to us, have it documented. And in a civil, humane, and right way, we will conduct our investigations to ensure that justice prevails. So, Mr. Speaker, Yamakro has no difficulty in supporting the proposed bill today, the electricity rate reduction bond. I rest, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But bear with me for 1 second. Speaker, I have the honor to close this debate. And I know that our brothers and sisters of the North are celebrating Thanksgiving today. I wish them all the very best, as I do with my colleagues. I know Bahamians tend to celebrate Thanksgiving also on a regular basis, and those who have committed themselves to coming here today to do the people's business, I commend them, all of us. As Bahamians, Mr. Speaker, we have much to give thanks for. We witnessed one of those yesterday when members of this parliament could stand here freely and express a wide variety of views, whether they agreed with the government or not. And the opposition is only 4, but notwithstanding that, they were 4 who were able to stand up in a free democracy and express their views. Well, I'm glad the two showed up today because we might have called Senator Villain and taken over the opposition. But Mr. Speaker, we had a spirited debate on an issue that impacts all of us. And that issue impacts everyone that we know. And the critical issue relates to reliable power. That is important for everybody here. Reliable, inexpensive power is essential for our daily lives and also to improve the ease of doing business in our country for everybody. Truth be told, for all of us, regrettably, we've had neither for far too long. Power has not been reliable, it's not been inexpensive. You know, sir, in many respects, though, many respects in relation to that, memories are very short. Yesterday, we outlined the reasons why we are here, why we are where we are now in relation to power. And that must have been painful for some members here, but it was the reality. It's the truth. We outlined the challenges that we face, fairly, sir, factually. We outlined the inadequate legislation, and that was not rebutted. We also outlined the steps for moving ahead in the interest of every single Bahamian. While I'm at it, Mr. Speaker, let me commend BPL Chairman Donovan Moxey, Rate Reduction Board Chairman Jeff Andrews and their boards, respective boards, and CEO Whitney Hasty of BPL. They've all been working assiduously to make a difference in this country. Yesterday, we outlined a number of things. The first is that within the next 2 years, Mr. Speaker, in this country, we should have 250 megawatts of reliable, inexpensive, new power. That's historical. It's never, ever happened in this country before. That is good news for Bahamians. No government in the history of this country has ever accomplished that. None. None. No matter what plans they say that they may have had. It is revolutionary. It is a new paradigm. And we're going to have clean power and inexpensive power and reliable power. And Mr. Speaker, the good thing about that is that it's going to start in 3 weeks when we get 132 megawatts online by the middle of December. The second thing, Mr. Speaker, is that we are refinancing $321 million of old BPL debt. And members opposite spoke passionately about their concerns related to BPL. But Mr. Speaker, let's remember that they started BPL under a huge debt burden. Speaker, no businessman, and there are many successful business people in here, no businessman or businesswoman would ever start a business owing hundreds of millions of dollars. That's what we did with BPL. So in some respects, we set BPL up to fail because we started as a company that was in debt for over $200 million. BPL has never really had a chance to show what it can do. They are going to get the first opportunity now to really show what they can do. They're going to be working on loans with lower interest. For the first time since BPL started, they're going to be able to invest in generators as well as transmission and distribution without having to rely on the government. That's the first time that's happening in many, many years. Speaker, we spoke about some of those investments. We spoke about the solar installations in the Family Islands, and I'm grateful that South Eleuthera and North Eleuthera spoke. The Family Islands energy is more expensive because the fuel comes to New Providence first, and then it has to be transported to the Family Islands, and then you have other challenges. And so New Providence, as the Prime Minister indicated, New Providence consumers subsidize power in the Family Islands because we want our brothers and sisters in the Family Islands to pay the same thing that we pay here in New Providence. And it would be unfair to charge them what power really costs to bring to them. Speaker, I've been in some of the stations in the Family Islands, places like Black Point. If you go to the station at Black Point, you can't hear anything. It's deafening. You have those old engines that have been around for a long, long time. And it's really, really bad. And that's the kind of thing that we're seeking to deal with. We're going to ensure that in all those Family Islands, we have reliable, inexpensive, new power. Mr. Speaker, all of what we see now is soon going to be a thing of the past. We're going to have conversion to LNG. We're going to have lower costs. We're going to have cleaner power. We're going to have advanced metering infrastructure so BPL doesn't have to worry about the burden of receivables and delinquencies, and people are going to pay as they go. And BPL is going to have a fair opportunity to succeed. Mr. Speaker, to get the benefit of these improvements, it is clear, it is uncontroverted, that we need to first amend the law. The current law is entirely inadequate. And as I demonstrated yesterday, virtually every section of that law has to be amended. So, Mr. Speaker, that is why we're here. We're here to amend that law so we can give BPL a fair opportunity to succeed. Speaker, as a consequence of the financing, there are going to be some short-term challenges. And we were upfront about that and honest about that. We indicated what those challenges were. We understand, Mr. Speaker, how adding $1 to a bill can hurt people. And so the government is seeking to find ways to ameliorate that. And very shortly, the Prime Minister will make some statements in relation to that. Because we want to be sure that we give every Bahamian an opportunity to be able to have power and to have power as inexpensive as possible. Now, members opposite had what I call a faint refrain about their tiered plan that they never put into effect. Mr. Speaker, and the Prime Minister spoke about why they didn't put that into effect, because this whole town would have been shut down by the businesses. That's why. When we come here, we have to be frank and straight with the Bahamian people. We have to be frank with the Bahamian people. Speaker, there should be architects over there on that side, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, the opposition should be architects. They have a cupboard full of plans that they can drag out for anything, any occasion. They say, see our nice plan, see our nice plan. They have all kinds of plans, Mr. Speaker. Ask them which one of those plans they implemented. Ask them which one of those plans they implemented. And Mr. Speaker, the answer is always the same. They have the same refrain. We were going to implement it. So the criticism, Mr. Speaker, of them being a do-nothing government is warranted. It is accurate. Speaker, their defense yesterday was they had a business plan. This is a document. This is the business plan that they had. This is the business plan that Cat Island referred to. This business plan was from October 23rd, 2015.
Wow.
Mr. Speaker, the first time the Bahamian public saw this, the initial on this business plan, this is the House of Assembly's copy. The initial on this business plan is TDB, my initials, on the 20th of September 2017. 47 months later, just almost 2 years later, 47 months later. That's when this first came to the attention of the Bahamian people. Speaker? Speaker, they had this plan. They had this business plan, and every copy of it says, confidential material, do not distribute. Do not distribute.
How do you get it?
Confidential material, do not distribute. This was the business plan that the Bahamian people kept asking for 2 years. It was the transparency of the FNM government that brought this business plan to life.
Honorable member. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Anglican.
The member knows that I sat down yesterday when he got up, and it was just, to hear what he had. I'm wondering, and I appreciate what the member is saying about transparency, and I'm wondering if he'd be minded to tell us and to lay on the table of the Parliament, and I'm asking for good reason because we do have some information about how the $650 million will be applied in this process. Because there is a report, there is a outline, a plan, and because you're so transparent, I'd be grateful if you would also lay that, because the Bahamian people would like to know how the $650 million will be applied. I'm wondering if you would favor us with that. No. I said lay the plan. Lay the plan. I was saying, what do you want? Lay the plan. Listen. You lay the agreement
Michael, you are the good wicket. You stay the course. You stay the course, Michael. Honorable members.
Speaker.
Chair recognizes the honorable member for Carmichael.
Mr. Speaker, I heard the honorable member for Anglican. I will touch on that soon. Speaker, there were so many claims that were made in relation to this plan. One of the claims that was made related to where the price of fuel was going to go in 2020. And they do have a forecasted cost of service, Mr. Speaker. And they may have been able to meet that forecast. But Mr. Speaker, in 2016,
Honorable members.
in 2016, when we had some of the lowest fuel prices ever, they didn't hedge. They didn't hedge. And as a result, the prices went back up. And that's one of the challenges we face today. Because we should, in 2016, if they had hedged, we wouldn't have many of the problems we have now. That's one of the challenges, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this plan is revealing for any number of respects if you read it, All of us have copies of it. It's very interesting, Somebody talked about the VSEP under the Free National Movement yesterday. But this has the whole employee reduction plan, page 289, page 189.
Well, you said it was small. You didn't read that?
Yeah.
You said it was small.
They had a VSEP. They were going to let 268 people go at BPL.
Oh, talk that.
They had early retirements for another 180. That's 448. And then they had a plan for further redundancy, Mr. Speaker.
This is their plan.
This is their plan.
The master plan.
This is their plan.
Master plan. Master plan.
Honorable members, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Honorable Member Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
You don't mind?
Go over there.
Could I have leave to speak?
You can switch this.
No, you gotta go over there.
Yeah, speak from the spot. Yeah.
You all gotta lead by example. You know, say yourself.
First being a leader.
I have leave to sit next to my colleague.
Yes, we come over here. You want to speak for Cat Island now?
You wouldn't let us speak because we can't speak yourself.
All the same.
Honorable members,
Speaker, you know, what is noteworthy is that the member speaks to the business plan that was dated in 2015. Is that correct? That's when it was laid, 2015. All right? The member ought to know, and the records would reflect, and he has it, that yes, that was proposed in that plan, but that plan, as I was pointing out, the plan was subsequently amended. And there are, no, Mr. Speaker, I invite,
honorable members.
Mr. Speaker, and they have the information, they could lead. If you're going to, what is misleading there, Mr. Speaker, is that on the 13th of April, 2016, the matter relating to labor and the layoffs and the VESTEP was amended, right? And at the insistence of the board, through my direction, the plans for any layoff and or redundancy was abandoned on the basis that the reduction in fuel, the reserves coming from, and he can just check the records, and I gave him the specific date to go and look for it. On the 13th of April, 2016, it was in fact abandoned.
You got this copy, but you ain't got the next copy. Why didn't they zoom a hole in that plan yesterday? No, he got this copy, but he ain't got the amended copy.
Speaker, Cat Island shouldn't do that to me, because all he had me doing was joking. The Speaker, they're asking me, and the member for Angleton stood up this morning asking about our plan. And he's telling me, I think, the 13th of April, 2016.
Watch him. 3 years.
13 months before the Bahamian people threw them out of office.
They had a new plan.
And 3.5 years ago, the Speaker, that they had a plan. The Speaker, the plan still hasn't gone here, Mr. Speaker.
It ain't get here. Where it is?
3.5 years, almost 4 years, going into 4 years, and that plan is still not gotten here.
In the pipeline. He got the original.
You all are very brave, Mr. Speaker.
No. We don't have no plan. You said we ain't got nothing.
Honorable members.
Because there wasn't nobody. I ain't doing anything to nobody. I ain't working for the Bahamian people. I ain't making things work.
All right, Mr. Speaker. All right, Mr. Speaker.
I own it. My hands are clean. I had no shingle.
All right, Mr. Speaker. So they amended their plan. If I'm going to speak about page 239, and I will yield to Cat Island if he says that in their 2016 plan they revised this page 2. Okay. So, Mr. Speaker, page 239 speaks about reliability. And you know, we've been criticized about reliability, and I reminded the country that is because of the fact that members opposite did virtually nothing, that we had the challenges we had. This is what it says, this is what their plan says about reliability. It says emergency load shedding due to insufficient generation to meet electrical demand should occur once emergency load shedding due to insufficient generation to meet electrical demand should occur once in every several years, not daily. To provide system frequency stability, there were 585 under-frequency related events in the past year, resulting in some level of outages to customers.
How much?
There were 585. Let me go down further.
Yeah.
Improving generator availability. There were 738 events this past year where a number of electric customers suffered outages because there were insufficient generation to provide service to all of the
What year that
customers.
was?
738. Let me go down further, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me go down further. Loss of generation. 978 events this past year.
978.
Mr. Speaker, let me go down. System shutdowns. 90 events this past year. Circuit trips associated with a complete island-wide shutdown. 90, Mr. Speaker. This is their plan, Mr. Speaker. I don't know if this was revised in 2016 too, but this was their plan.
You could yield.
Mr. Speaker,
And a point of order.
Now they come on.
the difference between us and them, Mr. Speaker, the contrast is clear. We're going to ensure that these things that are in their plan never happen again in this country. Never. Speaker, in 2.5 years since we were elected, that's December 2019, we will have 130 new megawatts. That's something they can't say. In 3 years,
Yes, we relay.
that's before May of next year, we're going to have 160 megawatts.
New.
Speaker,
New.
by 2021, 4.5 years after we elected, we're going to have 250 new megawatts of power in this country.
How much they put in?
New. Zero.
No
Speaker.
pipe, no pipe, no pole.
No pipe, no pole.
Speaker,
5 years. 5 years.
No pipe, no pole.
Speaker, what really surprised me about
5 years.
what really surprised me about my friend from Cat Island yesterday was when he asked me if I knew that BPL had hired 7 new people. Speaker, BPL has hired 7 qualified Bahamians for the top posts in the company. The CEO, the Chief Executive Officer, the Chief Operating Officer are Bahamians. McKellen is the only one, Mr. Speaker, and he's not in that 7. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud. I'm proud that this FNM government,
Professional behavior.
this FNM government, Mr. Speaker, put 2 intelligent Bahamians
Payments.
are the Chief Executive Officer and the Chief Operating Officer of BPL. They can't make the same claim, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud because, you know, my children are away in university, just like many of you have children away in university now. And we want them to be able to come back home to the Bahamas and claim their heritage and give something back to this country as young Bahamians
Dehumanization.
and make a difference. Mr. Speaker, but you know, Mr. Speaker, let me tell you why Cat Island said what he said.
Why did you say that?
Those 7 Bahamians, Mr. Speaker,
Yeah.
are making less than the 3 expatriates they had. Those 7 Bahamians that we hired at the top posts at BPL are making less than 3 expats that they had.
What we talked about yesterday. I don't believe that. The ones Carolyn talked about yesterday.
Let me just go through this again. Let me just go through this again for the Bahamian people. Let me just go through this again. They had a CEO who had a monthly salary of $25,000. In addition to that, that CEO had a monthly housing of $6,000. In addition to that, that CEO had monthly benefits and taxes of $3,833.33. And had relocation costs of $23,637.55. Mr. Speaker, I would prefer to give that and pay that to a Bahamian.
I don't believe they did that.
Mr. Speaker, since they raised the issue of the 7 Bahamians, let me talk about the second in command.
Shame.
Let me say something about the second in command. The second person had an annual salary, a monthly salary.
Second expat?
There's a second one. $23,750 per month.
That's our monthly salary for the year. Salary a year, 5 weeks and they straight.
Plus, no, I'm sorry, they were making more a month than you because they had $6,000 a month in housing.
What?
And then monthly benefits and taxes of $3,833.
Because it's not aware of that.
Speaker, total travel and other costs for that person, $33,985.36. That's the second one, Mr. Speaker.
Got to be a point of order at this point.
Speaker, the third one. Yeah, the third one had a monthly salary of $18,750. Monthly housing of $6,000. And monthly benefits and taxes of $1,333, and total travel and other costs of $36,644.59. Speaker, I would like to spend some of that money on my Bahamian people.
No, she don't. No. Not my lips and matches. They don't mix up lips and matches.
They're all for Bahamians though. They're all for Bahamians though. All for Bahamians. All for Bahamians.
Speaker,
They got to pay the bills that you were putting on there.
All for Bahamians though.
You want to put the same bill on them.
Mr. Speaker, Cat Island.
The appointee was making money and the free down carry on with the
Speaker, Cat Island.
$400,000 a year.
Cat Island sought to justify the tariff decreases in 2003. And we gave them $983,165,066
Honorable
reasons.
members,
We gave them $983,165,066 reasons why it was not justified. That's the foregone loss of BPL as a result. Those $53 million in reserves that he spoke about were eaten up in a year. BPL was crippled. BEC was crippled for the next 16 years instead of stimulating the economy. And Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry that Cat Island thinks that I didn't understand the BEC BPL structure based on what I read in the legislation. I was left behind by them. In that respect, I'm in good company because obviously Higgs and Johnson don't understand it, Ernst & Young don't understand it, Lennox Payton don't understand it, Norton Rose don't understand it, and Citibank don't understand it because they all have the same opinion that I have. Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, this issue of the business plan has been raised, and members opposite have asked why we haven't tabled it here. Let me say, Mr. Speaker, that in the interest of full transparency, everything relating to what BPL is going to do will be tabled here. Anyone who deals with these matters knows that while the rating agencies are looking at it, there's something called a quiet period. And that quiet period should end very soon. As soon as that quiet period is over, we obey the quiet period in accordance with SEC rules, the Securities and Exchange Commission in the United States. As soon as that quiet period is over, we will ensure that every Bahamian has access to whatever BPL is going to do, Mr. Speaker. So I want to assure my colleagues on the opposite side that the Bahamian people will not wait years and years to get a business plan. And they will not be still waiting to get an amended business plan that is somewhere in some file, someplace that someone says. Speaker, my brother let me just say this, Mr. Speaker. And one of the other things we're going to be doing very soon, right now we're spending $2 million a month, $2 million a month, rent on a Greco engines. We have, Mr. Speaker, we have 105 of them. By June of next year, we can be down to 40 of them, Mr. Speaker. And by phase 2 in 2021, they're going to be gone out of the country. Mr. Speaker, my brother from Pine Ridge, who couldn't be here today,
Is he a brother?
spoke about, oh yeah, everyone in this parliament is my brother, everybody, my sister and my brothers.
Okay.
One of the things is that I disagree, we disagree, and we disagree strongly, but everybody in here I respect, and everybody in here I hold in high regard. And so my brother from Pine Ridge said that we should try to do some things to attract international investors. And I just want to, for persons who listen to what he said, is that the whole bond offering, a little over $500 million, is essentially attracting international investors. And also, Mr. Speaker, some 70 million of that is being offered to Bahamian investors. So, Mr. Speaker, any Bahamian who wants to be able to invest is going to be part of what we can do. Mr. Speaker, the member for Exuma reiterated a lot of what Cat Allen said, including repeatedly asking for a plan. He said investors are very interested. But no, Mr. Speaker, Bahamian investors, as far as I know, are very, very interested. And I hope that investors such as the member for Exuma will also be investing in BPL, because it's going to be a wonderful opportunity to invest, in a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to invest in a utility. And the FNM is going to offer him that opportunity. Speaker, some mention was made of persons who made comments in the public arena, and I'm going to stay away from that. But the only thing I'm going to say is that when I became Minister of Public Works, from early in the morning until late in the evening, I used to see a lot of people who came in who wanted to invest in BPL. And from time to time, I see those same people now speaking in the media. And I'm very concerned that none of them expressed their conflicts of interest with respect to the interest that they had and the offers that they have put forward in relation to clients. And that's very important for us to do. When we speak in public, Mr. Speaker, if you have conflict, if you were someone who wanted to invest in BPL, you came and saw me about it, then it's important for you to say to the media when they interview you, I had 2 clients who wanted to invest in this. I had a client who came forward for this. Full disclosure, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of pension has arisen. And I want to say to colleagues that the defined benefit plan has been closed. There's no more defined benefit plan at BPL. No new members are being added. And the shortfall, unlike we have been advised by the actuaries not to borrow money for the shortfall. The shortfall will be made up over the next few years. What BPL has now is a defined contribution plan, which makes more financial sense so that people contribute to the development of their pension. Speaker, the issue of Shell was raised, and I want to assure members that they will hear more in relation to Shell very, very soon. Very, very soon. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to close by saying that this country faces real challenges. And those challenges must be addressed in a forthright manner. We are not going to kick the ball down the road like the members opposite did. We need to look at the challenges that are faced by the most vulnerable in our society. And we, as I indicated, the Prime Minister is going to make some statements in relation to that. And that may include things like raising the ceiling on VAT or other compensatory actions. But he will make that statement. That is not for me to make. We care very deeply about Bahamians, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, Carmichael, in 3 weeks, we will have 130 megawatts of power and more to come. I so move.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Anglican.
Thank you, Speaker. I want to thank the member for undertaking to lay the report of how the business plan and what's going to happen. But I'm wondering, because he was able to give numbers, if he can, in advance, do two things for us, please. One, tell us how the $650 million will be applied. I don't think that that would, he has not said it, I don't think that that would offend anything in your concerns. And then secondly, I'm wondering, please, because you've raised it in your debate, if you would be good enough to provide the Parliament with the circumstances surrounding the arrangement with Watsilla, because it caused concern with the board and with public at large, and I believe that the Americans made representations about it. There were concerns swirling around it. It came out of left field. And I'm wondering whether you would be able to provide the Parliament with an explanation as to how we got here. And not only that, the details of Watsilla, and more importantly, sir, how did Watsilla get into the picture? We're very concerned about that. We're wondering if you would share the details with us, please.
We'll get back to you. Listen for raising it. I know yesterday she had a copy of my contribution.
Yes.
And if she goes to page 20 of my contribution, she will see a fairly clear outline of what we are seeking to do with $607 million. I also indicated at that time that that is at 607 because we're trying to make some decisions in relation to Abaco, generation in Abaco, and replacement of Abaco generation. And we may do some other things. We may not even go to 650. We may actually go less. We may go to 500. But we wanted to know that the market will bear 650. That's where we are. So she has it in detail, dollar by dollar, at page 30 of my contribution. The other matter in relation to Watsilla, I'd be pleased to provide it to this Parliament. I'd be honored to do in the interest of transparency. I'd be happy to do that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, honourable member. Honourable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act to repeal and replace the Electricity Rate Reduction Bond Act 2015 to refine the legal. Honorable members, the question is being put. I'll start over. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act to repeal and replace the Electricity Rate Reduction Bond Act 2015 to refine the legal framework for the issuance and redemption of securitized rate reduction bonds. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to repeal and replace the Electricity Rate Reduction Bond Act 2015 to refine the legal framework for the issuance and redemption of securitized rate reduction bonds.
For the second reading in committee of bills. Committee of the whole.
Speaker, I do hereby move that the House resolves itself in committee and that the Deputy Speaker takes a chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the House now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House, with the chairman of the committee of the whole House and deputy speaker in the chair. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole, with the deputy speaker and chairman of the committee of the whole in the chair.
Mr. Chair, for the record, we seek to deal with the matter of the Electricity Rate Reduction Bond Bill 2019. I now move, Mr. Chair, that the long title of the bill be agreed.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many members in the field remain seated, those opposing will rise. The long title of the bill is agreed.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I move that the short title and commencement be agreed.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that the short title and commencement of the bill be agreed. As many members in the field remain seated, those opposing will rise. The short title and commencement of the bill is agreed.
Opposite. Any place you want me to stop? Okay. Mr. Chair, I move that clause 2 through 5 be agreed.
Been moved and seconded. Chair recognizes
Section 2. Rate reduction bond, financing liability,
Can I-
that definition.
You were not heard unless you had just said.
Could I have leave to sit here, Mr. Chairman? Are you directed by the floor? I follow your advice.
Come on, senior man.
Could I have leave to sit here?
Well,
I asked if I could have leave.
can I answer you?
Yes or no? I mean, you have to.
You're saying
Yes or no, that's all. Yes, I did.
let me answer the question.
Yes.
The Speaker of this House has indicated that members, and it's tradition, that members speak from their chair. I would advise Mr. Cat Island Rumkey that you sit at your seat, and if your colleague wishes, she could sit next to you.
Move to you, but she not.
That's all right. Mr. Yeah, I note, Mr. Speaker, that the rate reduction bond financing liability includes now financial liabilities not only of corporation, but of DPL. corporation is not defined in the bill. I don't see that. And, and the question is, when we see the word corporation, what does that mean? We know that you're talking about BEC, but then you need to you have to clean that up and put a definition of corporation. But as I said, the structure was, BPL is supposed to be a subsidiary of BEC as a corporation. I don't see a definition of corporation. The second point I raised is that when the initial rate reduction bond bill was passed, the only liabilities existing would have been the liabilities of the corporation. BPL would have had a clean balance sheet with it, having only the assets of the corporation which were transferred. And so the question I wish to ask is, now that this bill will include the liabilities of BPL, which no doubt is prudent, I just wish to ask, and it's not any fault on the part of the drafting of the former bill, because the former bill, at the time the bill was passed, there was no bills incurred by or any liabilities to BPL. I wanted an idea of what those liabilities are in BPL, not what was left, because you seem to have conflated the legacy debt to be the debt of BPL. You could tell us what are the liabilities of BPL since it's in corporation state, excluding what we deem then as the legacy debt.
Speaker, I thank the honourable member for Cat Island, who is very astute and who I respect with respect to his views of the law. Speaker, I want the member for Cat Island to consider the 2015 Act and the 2019 Act side by side. The only changes that have been made here are the inclusion of the words liabilities and expenditures. Under the 2015 Act, you refer to corporation and BPL.
Where's the expenditures?
Sorry?
Saying that your act isn't coming.
The 2015 Act referred to the corporation and to BPL. So you're indicating that BPL has now been included. That is not so. BPL was always in it. If you look at your original draft, it says corporation and BPL, and this draft says corporation and BPL. What you are correct is that after debts, we've included liabilities and expenditures. And that is because of a legal rule that you and I are aware. BPL has been in existence now for several years. It's important to know, to cover everything. And so if there are liabilities that have arisen or expenditures that we are not aware of, it will be covered in the legislation. When you started this, when you passed this, BPL did not exist. You were starting it from scratch. And so there would not have been any debts, any liabilities or expenditures. Do you have 2015, Cat Island? Do you have 2015?
Yeah,
Okay.
15.
Okay, so you'll see what I'm saying. In 2015, you had means the debts of the corporation and BPL. In 2019, we say means the debts, liabilities, and expenditures of the corporation and BPL. So the only change has been the inclusion of the words liabilities and expenditures. That's the change. You had BPL there.
I don't know what but I have rate reduction bond, right? You have, and I'm looking specifically at the disbursement issue. You have if you look at A.
No, you didn't read it. You were referring to
No, I looked at
rate reduction bond financial liabilities.
Yeah, and then I go to A. Go to A.
Okay.
They say corporation and BPL. Right?
Yeah,
You see what I'm saying?
yeah.
Right now, when you go to the A in 2015,
Yeah.
it does not include corporation,
Right.
BPL.
Right.
And you have it now including it. That's what it's
Right, okay, okay.
You see what I'm
And the reason why, as I indicated previously, is that when you started it, when you passed this, you passed the Electricity Act at the same time, you were creating BPL at the same time. Now BPL has been an entity, an ongoing entity, since 2015. And so it must be included, all we can say.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I commend you. I said it's prudent.
Yeah.
The question I asked is not why it is there, is whether or not you could allow us to appreciate what those liabilities are to date, so that we can factor it in. Because when we add up those numbers that you directed us to at page 20 in your submissions, they don't add up to the 650 or whatever.
Yeah, but Mr. Speaker, I said 3 times in this House that they don't add up to 650. I said they probably add up to about 607 or 610. And I explained that we were looking at the Abaco situation to see what money we have to get for Abaco and whether we are going to utilize some other means of financing that or whether we're going to utilize the bond for it. And if we're going to utilize the bond, we wanted to make sure that we could get up to 650. So I said that several times in the House, Carol. If you didn't hear me, I understand.
No, I heard that. I heard that, and that's why that is why the question arises. It arises because there is that residual sum that you may or may not draw down by virtue of by issuing those bonds, and so I understand that. What I would wish to have an appreciation of is what are today the liabilities of BPL from its inception, recognizing that the liabilities of the corporation when BPL was in fact incorporated and commenced its operations, the liabilities of the corporation was not transferred to BPL. So what interests me, right, which will perhaps also interest the money market, is what has happened to BPL from its inception to now, and the liabilities, and how they may have arrived to the extent that they are today. And if you're able to tell me now, it may be a number you can't immediately tell us, I'll be grateful if you could sometime tell us of that number.
Speaker, BPL is going to have to produce their audit reports, and I'm going to have to produce those reports to this House. And I'm sure that they are going to be, those matters are going to be set out in detail because it's important for everybody to know what they are. And I commend Carol for raising the question. It's important for all of us. I thank you for raising it.
Follow up on that point on the 650, and Carmichael, I heard you indicated this does not cover the entire thing because you're looking at some other residual issues in terms of generation and distribution, etc. But what I wanted to ask is, of the 650 million, are you able to say whether any portion of that will be utilized for consultants? And if so, what is the approximate amount for consultants in that amount?
I will have to get an answer for you, Angliston. I know that when you did it, you had $10 million set aside for.
I think you're a bit more.
Yeah, you had $10 million set aside for a number of areas, including raising the bond, etc.
Right.
And I think we have something very similar. But the challenge is this, and I want to make it very clear, so I'm glad you raised this. We may go as low as 500 million, and we may go as high as 650. It really depends on how we're going to fund Abaco. And that's going to be very important, what we have to do in Abaco to bring Abaco back the way this country would like to see Abaconians live. And so as those decisions are made, I have a duty to let this Parliament know. And I will not shirk in that duty to let my colleagues know exactly what we're doing. And I appreciate you raising the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So you raised the
Been moved and seconded that clause 2 through 5 bill Be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Clause 2 through 5 of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chair, I move that clause 6 to 9 be agreed.
Been moved and seconded that clause 6 through 9 of the bill be agreed. Many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Clause 6 through 9 of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chair, I move that clause 10 through 21 be agreed.
Being moved and seconded that clause 10 through 21 the bill be agreed. Chair recognizes Angliston.
Thank you. I don't know if I'm preempting the member for Cat Island, but clause 11, which speaks to the minister making an order approving the issuance of the rate, including a description of the total aggregate sum of the rate, stating the specific components, an estimate on the date on which the rate reduction, et cetera, et cetera. And I note that in the prior legislation, because we've heard a lot about that in this parliament. You have it there, what was the scheme in the prior bill set out the formula. Which clause was that? It set out a formula for the calculation of the reduction bond fee. And yes, it's the old bill. But we noted that you've departed from that. And and so there's a concern. It speaks to the order, I believe.
11?
Right. Sorry.
Oh, section 11. Yeah.
Yeah. Clause 11. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Right. And so the point I'm making is whether I'm wondering why was it that you chose, you departed from the prior bill? I know you said in a question to the member just now that you hardly changed one of the clauses and just maybe a word. I think you're saying clause 13? No. We're talking about the way in which the rate that is going to be applied to the consumer, the way it is to be calculated. And we note that in the prior legislation, I'm trying to find the provision that you did, right? We were just looking at it. It spoke specifically about a formula. You've departed from that, and it's now dependent on the order or what is coming from the minister. And the concern we have, and it actually, the more I thought about it overnight, Mr. Chairman, it really caused me a great deal of angst, and I really want to make this case to the government. There is something, and I will use the language, morally wrong to apply a tax, a rate, an obligation, whatever you want to call it, across the board, universally, regardless of the economic status of the individual. Because in the prior legislation, we raised this in debate, and I just want to, because we're here, I want to put this for your consideration. It was tiered. The first tier was those who use the lowest consumers, which tend to be people along the poverty line. And in fact, the scheme allowed for an instant reward or reduction in rates. Immediately, they would get a reduction in rates. But as you go up in consumption, then you begin to tax relatively. That tends to be that has been universally worldwide, the underlying philosophy about taxation. You do not tax people the same way. It's unfair. And so something is wrong with a formula that has Lyford Key paying the same as someone from Miami Street. And I want to use this opportunity at this point in the committee to invite the government not to do that, to look at the scheme that the former administration had proposed, which phased it in according to the means of and consumption of the grouping. Total failure. Can I say that the whole underlying, you recall, you recall you increased VAT. We introduced VAT, you increased it. You didn't like it, but you love it now. Anyway, that's beside the point. The underlying reasoning of VAT is that the more you consume, the more you pay. And that tends to be people who have more disposable income, the wealthier amongst the group. That is the reasoning about it, St. Hansman. You don't know everything, you know. I know that you don't know everything, okay? No, but I'm making a point. I'm making the point. I'm making the point. I'm making the point. And so, Mr. Chairman, what I'm inviting the government to revisit this. Do not apply $20 to $30 in Miami Street and do the same thing in Lyford Key. It is not fair. It is immoral. I am urging you not to do it, Mr. Speaker. I'm yes, woman? No, Speaker.
Hold on, one second.
Mr. Chairman, now I don't want the member. I don't want North Lutheran to believe.
I apologize. The member.
Thank you, because woman or not, I was elected just like you. Trust me. So don't worry about what my gender is. It's irrelevant.
All the members, not illusion.
I know.
We got your apologies.
Right.
We got your apologies.
Woman or not.
Listen, let's keep it.
See the country watching. I be watching and hearing, Mr. Speaker. I see what I listen to. I listen, my urges, and I accept the apology. But woman or not, I am making this point. It is my view. Now, who disagrees can get up and make their point.
One second. Let's hear Elizabeth on the point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I stand on a point of order that the member for Angliston, as impassioned as she is misleading this House and the public. I have a copy of the Electricity Rate Reduction Bond Act 2015 in my hand. At no point in this act is there any statement at all about this imaginary formula that she is describing.
I didn't say that imaginary.
And therefore, Mr. Speaker, perhaps she should restate because there is no such provision in this act. I am happy to share it with her if she'd like to, if the honorable member would like to have a copy of it.
Obliged.
In the meantime, she should withdraw her statement that there is such a provision.
In addition, they call it more immoral.
I understand. I think you had the point.
I heard the point,
yes.
and certainly I don't need the member's copy. The member for Kedai and I, we're trying to find it now. We're looking at it. Apply bill, Mr. Speaker. I hear the member for North Lutheran. I'm not bullied easily, you know. Get that in your head. I ain't gonna be bullied in this house, woman or no. I'm not gonna be bullied. Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman? No. Mr. Chairman,
Can you assist the House, Angliston? Can we allow Angliston to respond?
Yes, no, I'm responding now.
North Lutheran. Please. Angliston, can you assist? Can yourself or I think Cat Island was also.
No bullying here now.
The chair recognizes Carmichael.
Speaker, I understand the passion of the member from Angliston because all of us.
One second. I think he's on a point of order. I can't hear 2 points of order. Let me hear him first, and then I'll hear you next.
See, all of us are concerned, and all of us are very passionate about Bahamians and about what we pay, and we all are very concerned. The first thing is that, as the honourable minister has indicated, there's not a provision in the Act. It was a policy position that members opposite sought to take in their deliberations, but they don't have that in the legislation itself. That's not a provision in the legislation. So that's not something that we have changed in the legislation. You won't find that there. And I was waiting for the member for Angliston to finish so that I could have fully explained it, because I want to make it clear to members of Parliament. My job is to ensure that all of us go away understanding, appreciating exactly what we're doing, because not everyone is going to have the time that I have to spend studying the Act. What the members opposite sought to do was a policy position. They didn't put that policy position in the legislation. So we've not sought to amend it. And maybe when I spoke yesterday, I could have been clearer. I was trying to speak very clearly. I indicated what an average household would pay. I didn't speak to the formula that's being used, et cetera, et cetera. And I wanted to be careful not to do that because of the quiet period that we are in. I wanted to be careful not to say too much because we are in a quiet period with the investors, with everybody looking at the bonds, with the SEC, etc. And so I gave an average figure of what an average household would pay, depending on, and I gave a large span from $20 to $30. And once the bond is placed, and we can table those documents, we'll see exactly what those percentages are based on every bill. So I want everybody to understand that I gave an average figure based on an average household, and based that what Angleston has indicated is not in the legislation. It was a policy position that they took, and that policy position was revoked by former Prime Minister Christie. Yeah. The whole purpose of what we seek to do, and what we will seek to do and ensure, is that we are going to protect the poor people in this country, and we are going to protect the vulnerable. Thank you, sir.
I've actually found it. I like when the members call me passionate. I'm very passionate about my country. Very passionate. Now, if other people in there are not passionate, then that's not a problem. But I notice whenever they're talking about women in particular, we're passionate or emotional. I believe the member for East Grand Bahama called me emotional the other day. Well, you know, I know North Lutheran nobody emotional, so I ain't getting in that right now. And so, Mr. Chairman, I've actually found it. I found it. It's in the definition section. Rate reduction bond fee in the two bills. Right. The one that you said.
2015.
You had to amend every section, and then you just recently told us you only had to change a word in one. But anyway, that's just a collateral point. In the 2015 bill, the rate reduction bond means the fee imposed by BPL in accordance with and subject to sections 18 and 40 of the Electricity Act. And then you look at B. It says is calculated, this is the 2015, because this, while you say it was policy, we put it in the law because we knew how it would be charged. B says is calculated per estimated kilowatt hours usage by the customer and subject to periodic adjustment in accordance with Section 13. And Section 13 is there. As of now, we look at the 2019 bill, and what you have done here is you have the same thing. You talk about kilowatt hours usage by the customer or as otherwise specified in the rate reduction bond financing order. This is not a formula. We don't know what it means. It's not transparent. It could mean anything. It could mean rebates for the biggest consumers in the country, possibly. I don't know. And so I'm just wondering, what was the rationale for departing from a transparent formula, number one? And number two, it was more than just a policy. It was a commitment that was enshrined in the legislation, that it would be based on the kilowatt hours usage, and that it would be, as other countries have done, and I submit, it is wrong, it is immoral to tax all persons along the same lines. Listen, man, Elizabeth, you want to talk about everything, man. You need to go deal with that hospital, man, okay?
Let's stay on point.
Tell the member that, and you know, could you imagine the member for Elizabeth say it's stretching? You think the person in Miami Street can believe it's stretching when they're paying the same tax as billionaires in this country and millionaires? You think they think that's stretching? See, he who feels it knows it, you know, Mr. Chairman. He who feels it knows it, Mr. Chairman. And so, and I don't want to be distracted. What I'm saying to the member for Carmichael is this, please. If you could explain why you moved from that simple formula, number one. And number two, I'm asking that the government now reconsider an across-the-board tax, and to consider in the alternative, along the lines of what was proposed by the former administration, where you would have tiers of what would be paid, or the taxes, the fee, whatever you want to call it, per kilowatt hours, but at the lowest form. See, and you know, I think this is in line with what you've done already. You gave, you exempted VAT already, up to $300. There was some rationale for that. So why can't, I'm inviting you to apply the same rationale to people at the bottom of the economic scale in this country and not tax them, sorry? And not tax them in the same way. Sorry?
Kalani.
The member made a statement that we would look at that group that needs more help than others, and I would make a formal statement later as to how we would support that group. But I remind you again that the sliding scale that you spoke of, you were not here, unfortunately. I reminded the deputy leader, you're sitting in the wrong seat, the leader, the leader of the opposition, that when, yes, you had agreed to that, and there were lots of bickering even with that, but I won't go into that detail. But when that was presented to the business sector, you were advised that if that is implemented, there were gross objections. There'd be mass layoff. And as a result of that, you pulled back.
Can I say, Mr. Chairman, I thank you, Prime Minister, for, and I'm glad that our advocacy on this issue.
No, it's not your advocacy. You said that before you said that. No, it's not your advocacy.
Speaker, I hear what you say, but we know what you said yesterday. But can I say this, Mr. Chairman? The Prime Minister, I understand what he's saying about the business community and layoffs, and that probably related more to the level of the taxes or the levying on that particular grouping, and so that's something you can look at. But certainly the business community, which does keep the economy going, cannot be the determinant of how a government fairly allocates risk, responsibility, and liability on an issue like the electricity, particularly those who are the biggest consumers of electricity. So we look forward to hearing the statement, because we were told yesterday it was 20 to 30 across the board, and we look forward to the Prime Minister's statement at the end of this. Thank you.
On this, if I may, Mr. Deputy, as I understand it, the assertion or the amendment that we made to that one definition is the insertion of the words in relation to the financing order, the rate reduction financing order, which is required, and I went through that yesterday in the amendments. I would ask colleagues to look at the reason for it. It's
Look at what, sorry?
the reason why we are amending that. I went through it in my explanation yesterday, and all we did, we added the words usage by the, we just added a referral to the financing order. The financing order is Section 11 of this Act, the Rate Reduction Bond Act, and that is absolutely something that is going to be required. Having regard, see, that doesn't change anything. That just changes that just requires us to have the stability of the financing order considered, which is important to this Act. That's all. Yeah.
I appreciate the member's explanation. It's just that within the context of how the rate is set, it has alternative formulae. And so, yes, it does. It says either or. And that's the concern, because it's the or. We don't know what the or is. And we would hope that, that it's giving a level of discretion or flexibility that's not apparent in the legislation. And that's the concern. And so that's why we were asking that you put a criteria so the Bahamian people who are footing the bill will have an understanding as to how it is being calculated.
It's been moved and seconded that the chair recognizes Member for Kalani.
Clear information for the record. The member made a statement that she's happy that we're listening to them, and now we'll do advocacy, and we will present methods of helping that grouping that need assistance. We said that before. Yes, we are listening to you, but we said that before. You were listening to us with respect to that point. No.
I think the point is,
Get Allen.
The point is that what was told to the nation and ourselves is that the average household increase across the board is $30,000 to $40,000. It didn't speak to whether or not that demographic who say, for example, using 300 kilowatt hours would be less. And then after that was made known, then y'all said it.
We understand, you know.
Okay, I think we've
Y'all slept on
chopped this point up in a million pieces. And I think we understand each other. It's being moved and seconded that clause 10 to 21 of the bill be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated, those opposing will rise. Clause 10 to 21 of the bill is agreed.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, I now move that clause 22 to 26 be agreed.
It's been moved and seconded. Clause 22 through 26 be agreed.
Go ahead.
Just giving him 2 more seconds.
Nothing there.
It's been moved and seconded that clause 2 to 26 of the bill be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated, those opposing will rise. Clause 22 through 26 of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chair, I now move that clauses 27 to 37 be agreed.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that clause 27 through 37 of the bill be agreed. Through 37. You said 37, right?
Yeah. Now, Mr. Speaker, I wonder if the...
Callan, you don't mind speaking from your section, please?
Sorry.
What section are you addressing?
Well, it falls under all this. That's a general question that is addressed by those various provisions. It's a question of, we talked about the rate reduction bond. We talked about the bond being securitized by the, by the bills paid by customers, and it will require an increase in the base rate, I think. I'm wondering how the party considered what portion of a customer's bill will be dedicated for the purposes of the rate reduction bond.
I didn't say anything about increasing the base rate.
No, I didn't. That was our approach. I'm just wondering what would be this government's approach in how they're going to utilize the income for the purposes of satisfying the bond.
Speaker, I indicated earlier today that we're in that quiet period. I want to be very careful. And I think Cat Island is aware of that. We're in the quiet period. I want to be very careful with respect to that period. I want to be careful what I say and how I say it, and that's why I made a very general statement yesterday to seek to be helpful. And I've indicated that as soon as that quiet period is over, I'm going to be happy to lay everything here that relates to policy and relates to what we're going to do. Everything. And I'd be grateful if, I'm sure Caroline will appreciate exactly what I'm saying.
I do. I know the Damascus movement being experienced by those over there continue to throw the fact that the government, when we were there, were not transparent. I think they now appreciate why things were not made public when they thought it ought to.
For 3 years.
Right? And from a speaker, you're still up. Nothing. But nothing.
Let's stay on the bill. Let's stay on point.
Nothing has been made public.
Let's be on point, Cat Island. Let's be on point.
So I appreciate those things. I know, I understand. Right, but the question, what we do say, it was not clear. If the member were to say that there are some items and identify them, for example, the manner in which we are going to secure the bond, the terms and conditions that will be attached to the bond, we are unable to disclose them now because of the arrangements because of the nature of where we are now, the quiet moment that we call it. Then we could understand that. But the patting on the back of how transparent the celebratory thought that, we are transparent.
All right, okay, yeah, okay.
I expect to hear more.
Okay. It's being moved and seconded that clause. The chair recognizes Angliston.
Just on the point of the member embracing the transparency, and we appreciate that. I've spoken over and over, we've yet to see the heads of agreement for Prince George Dock, but I trust we will get that. The reason I'm raising it, I'm just saying we haven't seen that yet, and that's the people's asset. But I would only remind the member for Carmichael, I know you remember this, that when the bankruptcy proceedings were going on with Bahama, and that the parties before the court, I believe the court made a certain order about what was happening there and what could be disclosed. And of course, politically, it became that we were hiding in the dark and we were giving it away and we were this, that. And it was interesting, Mr. Chairman, at the change of administration, maybe a lot of Bahamians bought into that. Change of administration, the Attorney General was asked about it. I believe Yamako might have been asked about it.
And it's in relevance. I mean,
I'm just saying that, I'm just showing how the narrative is moving along.
Yes.
Chairman.
I mean, I wasn't even in politics. I don't know why I'm being reminded. So we don't need to go. Clause 27 to 37 of the bill. It's been moved and seconded that it be agreed. As many members as in favor remain seated, those opposing will rise. Clause 27 to 37 of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chair, I move that the first schedule be agreed.
Second.
Being moved and seconded, Cat Island, that the first schedule of the bill be agreed. Many members in favor remain seated, those opposing will rise. The first schedule of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the second schedule be agreed.
Second.
Being moved and seconded that the second schedule of the bill be agreed. Chair recognizes Cat Island. Michael.
I had indicated that there would be I had indicated that we would move, that there would be a movement of this. There is a space that I'd drawn attention to colleagues at in the second schedule at clause 73A. I believe colleagues have the proposed movement.
You're up there.
Speaker, we are proposing 73A. We are proposing in this clause 73A. Do you have this? Cat Island, do you have this? Okay. In the second column of the new proposed clause 73A, 2, it currently reads, there shall be paid into the fund. And that's what it reads. And I'd indicated that there would be a movement here because it's incomplete. Colleagues are there? That's on page 34. Page 34. If you go to 3 lines from the bottom, you'll see 2. There shall be paid into the fund, and it doesn't say anything. Okay. So this amendment is to cure that. And Mr. Speaker, it reads, there shall be paid into the fund such sums as may be A, provided from time to time out of the consolidated fund of the Bahamas, B, approved by the Board of Directors of BPL out of resources from time to time, and C, donated by persons or organizations for the purpose of the restoration of the electricity infrastructure after a disaster. And the movement seeks to amend that schedule in relation to an inadvertent omission, which I drawn to the attention of members at the time when I tabled the bill. If I may have a second.
Second. Being moved and seconded that the second schedule be agreed as amended. Many members that are in favor remain seated, those opposing will rise. Second schedule of the bill is agreed as amended.
Mr. Chair, I'm pleased to move that the bill in its entirety be agreed as amended.
Sure. Being moved and seconded that the bill in its entirety as amended be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated, those opposing will rise. The bill is agreed in its entirety as amended.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank you for your service, and I now move that the Speaker take the chair.
Pleasure serving. It's being moved and seconded that the Speaker now do take the chair. Speaker will now take the chair.
Chester, you want social services, right?
Speaker beg leave. Speaker beg leave to report that the committee has gone through the bills, making amendments thereto.
Honorable members, the Deputy Speaker and Chairman of the Committee of the Whole House has reported that the whole House has gone through the bill, having made amendments thereto. Third reading and passing of bills. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Southern Shores.
Mr. Speaker, I move for a third reading and passage of the Electricity Rate Reduction Bond Bill 2019.
I second.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a third time and pass. A bill for an act to repeal and replace the Electricity Rate Reduction Bond Act 2015 to refine the legal framework for the issuance and redemption of securitized rate reduction bonds. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read for a third time.
A bill for an act to repeal and replace the Electricity Rate Reduction Bond Act 2015 to refine the legal framework for the issuance and redemption of securitized rate reduction bonds.
Order that the bill do now pass and the title thereof be declared to be the Electricity Rate Reduction Bond Act 2019. For the third reading and passing of bills.
And Mr. Speaker.
Consideration of Senate amendments. Resolutions. Member statements. Honorable members, I'd like to just lead off member statements. Honorable members, I wish to, on behalf of the people of Nassau Village, extend an invitation to the entire island of New Providence to join us on Saturday morning at 8 a.m. for the BAIC Farmers Market that will be held on Alexandria Park in Nassau Village from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. All your fruits and vegetables will be made available. There will only be one location of the farmers market on Saturday, and that will be on Nassau Village Park, Alexandria Boulevard, on Saturday morning. It starts at 8 a.m. and it goes through to 1 p.m. Now, since this is also Thanksgiving, we have decided in Nassau Village to give thanks by having our annual Thanksgiving festival on the same day, which will begin at 2 p.m. There will be free food, drinks, bouncing castle, Junkanoo Russell cultural activities led by Redland Soldiers Junkanoo Group. And at 6 p.m., the pastors of Nassau Village will assemble to give God thanks as we celebrate the end of the hurricane season without any further incidents. So you are all invited to participate in the farmers market and into the cultural festival this coming Saturday in Nassau Village. I'd also like to express our sincere condolences and sympathy to the family, who is a family of Nassau Village, of the young lady that was discovered at the cabana in South Beach. And that very, yes, cabana in Yamaco, and that very unfortunate incident, which was very similar to the experience that the young lady had testified on Monday with violence against young women. The police is still doing their investigations in the matter, but I'm been reliably informed that the young lady who suffered in that incident is indeed a constituent of Nassau Village. Further member statements. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Angleton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just 2 points, really. One is, and I'm glad for the Minister of Health is here, the member for Elizabeth. You know, he's a man for all seasons on political issues, but in my constituency, there is a major concern, the Coconut Grove clinic.
He don't stay in his lane,
Kalani, take that smirk off your face.
That's just stay in his lane. He don't stay in his lane, man.
No, it services the Angleton community. It's, you know, people, it's right there on the border. Okay, you know, because you're talking about constituency, I'm talking about people and communities. And the clinic was shut down, and I'm getting messages all the time. And yesterday, they said, please raise it. And first, I'd like to ask, and member can speak afterwards, why that has happened, because it's one of the earliest clinics. It was put there in the early PLP government because it understood the importance of the community and having access, ease of access for health care, particularly people who are not mobile. And so it's created quite an incredible gap, and I believe it's having a negative effect on that community, which includes St. Barnabas, Angleton, and I guess maybe even surrounding areas. I want to urge the government to quickly revisit that, to be empathetic and sensitive to people who are struggling on the economic verges, minimum wage, unemployed, and to do all that the state can do to more effectively facilitate basic care and access to basic care for poor people. And the other thing I want to say, Mr. Speaker, people of Angleton have asked me, and I have to be obedient. I'm passionate. Did I hear that word again? I'm passionate about Angleton. They've asked me to express their great joy for Shane Gibson and his family after the ordeal that he has gone through. And they've also raised the issue that because out of that trial, a lot of issues came about police conduct and all that. And you know, in those communities, they're on the front line of interaction with the police oftentimes, and I think they understood or had a level of insight into the issues that came out of that trial. And the minister is not here, the member for Mount Moriah, but I want to, I think that the trial has unleashed so many fundamental concerns and worries about what is happening in this nation, that I think that, you know, something more has to happen than what has already happened for us we won't be healthy as a people until we do that. And I'll just take my seat down, Mr. Speaker, but you know, I keep thinking about this. The framers of the Constitution, they went to London, FNM, PLP, they sat down, and they purposefully put in our freedoms. So they weren't intending to have some constrictive environment for the Bahamian people. They wanted the same freedoms that the Europeans and the Americans have. They wanted our Bahamian people to enjoy freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom not to be subject to arbitrary arrest, freedom not to be detained without due cause, et cetera, et cetera. These are we have to really hold high and celebrate these freedoms. And I'm not sure, I get the sense sometimes that we don't have a full appreciation of it. And so the people of Angleton have asked me to express to the Gibson family their love and support and that their prayers have been answered by and large, and that we trust that out of this, and all that has come out of it, for our own sake. Because see, Speaker, tomorrow, Tim, we all at risk if it's suspect.
Honorable member.
All at risk, yes?
I permitted you to go. You know,
Well, there's no matter before the court.
I gave you some latitude.
Thank you.
But
No matter before the
it
court.
can still be.
Pardon me, sir?
Yes, it can still be.
Wow. This is, I hope the media is taking note of that. I was not aware. The Attorney General made a statement, the jury spoke, but if it can still be, I guess we'll have to wait and see. I'm not aware, Mr. Speaker. I'm not aware.
If you check criminal law, you'll find that jury decisions have been questioned.
Okay, but I see. Okay, I'll have to see that the provision that challenges the jury. I'll look for that.
It's unusual, but it has happened. I could provide you with some precedents.
Will you challenge a jury decision?
Anyway.
A jury decision?
Honorable member.
Leave that alone.
Wait a member statement.
Let me leave that alone. A jury decision.
Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, I could provide you.
I would like to send my condolences to the Pauline Young family in the Vincent White area. Ms. Pauline Young was one of our educators who passed away just recently. And we also have another gentleman by the name of Mr. Sammy Culmer, who was an ambassador for the island of Eleuthera and for the Bahamas. Mr. Culmer served in many capacities in the tourism industry, and he has passed on. I send my condolences to his family as well. We have another gentleman by the name of Mr. Charles Clark in Tarpon Bay. One of those individuals who served his community and served his community well in every aspect that he can. Mr. Clark, I offer my condolences to his family as well. Mr. Charles Mingo from Tarpon Bay as well. He was one of those gentlemen who lived in Tarpon Bay, was very, very quiet, but who lived a moral life. I offer my condolences to him and his family. And of course, we have another lady in governance, Ms. Flossie Sands, who basically lived a quiet life as well, and my condolences goes out to them. But Mr. Speaker, there's one individual that I would like to send my condolences to, the Curry family. Everyone knows Marsha Curry, who lived in New Providence, who came to the island of Eleuthera, one individual who had a good heart. Marsha Curry was one who came to live among the residents in Eleuthera, and she displayed her heart. She was just different, Mr. Speaker. One who came to live there and decided to start a halfway house for battered women. And the halfway house is just about completed, but she passed away, and I pray that we will find enough strength and the courage to finish that project that she started. And to her family, I offer my condolences. I'd just like to remind the Minister of Health about the Governor's Harbor Clinic. Persons in Governor's Harbor are very, very concerned about that clinic. We really need that clinic in Governor's Harbor. So I know it went to tender, we're waiting on things to happen, but this is the height of the season in Central and South, and I think we need it. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you for allowing me those few words.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Elizabeth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I may respond to the honorable member for Angliston, but before I do so, let me direct my attention to the honorable member for Long Island, who has been patiently awaiting his ambulances. And, the Ministry of Health has a commitment to provide ambulance service to the good people of Long Island. And while it has not happened yet, it will happen. To the honorable member for Angliston, the story of the Coconut Grove Clinic has been a long and very disappointing matter. The clinic first came to my attention when there was leaking from the concrete roof. We would have engaged a reputable contractor. They went in, repaired the roof, and then there were some concerns about the interior. When the contractor got in there, they found that most of the structure was termite destroyed, and they had to rip out all of it. The quotations that we came up with for remediation and replacement ended up being quite exorbitant, to the point where Given the fact that the Coconut Grove Clinic was built at a time before the current code, we now have a serious issue as to what should be done, whether to raise the whole thing and start over in order to build it up to code, or to repair a smaller clinic at code. Bids, requests for bids were placed in the paper last week, and we expect to receive those bids, choose a contractor, and move forward with the long-delayed repairs for a very important facility in Coconut Grove. I can assure you that the honorable member for St. Barnabas, the nursing staff, etc., and the people have been quite patient with a process. And it's a challenge not only with that clinic, but a lot of the legacy clinics in these communities. Because what we are trying to do is to standardize the quality of healthcare facilities across the archipelago, being mindful of the fact that there's a limited amount of resources. To the honorable member for Central and South Eleuthera, as you know, that process has already gone through bidding and so on and so forth. I will have to get back to you as to when exactly it will be completed. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Angliston.
Thank you. I just want to thank the member for his explanation. I just want to express the urgency of it. And it's been now a couple of years. And if you know, I understand you have a process, but I want to urge the urgency of it, please, so that you would know it's having a serious impact on the community.
Chair recognizes the honorable member for Southern Shores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to say on behalf of the good people of Southern Shores, I would have mentioned this earlier, but the calls keep coming in. And since this is the season of Thanksgiving, the people of Southern Shores, particularly those people in Marshall Road, want to express their gratitude to the member for Carmichael in his capacity as Minister of Works for lighting up their lives in that area. And I want to say to Stitchy on Calvin Road, Rainbow Close, that the good member and minister did not forget him. I have an undertaking from Mr. Pratt that they too will be illuminated in short. I want to say to the constituents of Southern Shores that the Honorable Minister is aware of their request for the speed bumps and some work in Sandra Avenue, and those are forthcoming. Mr. Speaker, while I'm on my feet, I want to thank the BAIC and the section that deals with cooperatives for a beautiful presentation at our association meeting this week. I want to put the constituents on notice that early next year, our first town hall meeting, we will invite persons who are responsible for the funding of small businesses, so I want to put them on the alert. And just before I take my seat, I want to express condolences to the family of Miss Casey Jane McPhee and Floyd Pratt as they grieve their loss. I want them to know that my heart and my thoughts are with them. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I want the constituents to know that I realize or notice that the calls and the WhatsApp messages are reducing about derelict vehicles that need to be moved as part of the Love Your Yard program. I want them to know that we're still looking for those calls because we continue to clean up our constituency.
Chair recognizes the honorable member for Yamakoro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, dedication, determination, drive, and discipline are the hallmarks for the Eastern Community Rising Star Band. Mr. Speaker, we launched the band on, the community launched the band on last Saturday. We thought it prudent to connect with the Bahamas All-Star Band. And so for those persons who join the band and they show promise, there is a possibility for them to be inducted into the Bahamas All-Star Band, and there's also the possibility for scholarships. So we're saying to the people in the Eastern community, we have a cadre of excellent instructors. We just want the parents to be a part of the process, because we intend not just to assist them with being able to play songs, but to be able to learn music, take the exams. It is also a mentoring program where senior persons in the community will come and make presentations to them. And it is also very much a part of the program that we have launched with the Bahamas Correctional Facility, where we have started one of the largest, and I dare say one of the largest backyard farming programs on just over 2 acres of property that we cleared off with the assistance of low-risk inmates from the correctional facility. I will underscore that on this Saturday, a group of us from the Yamacraw community will be going to dine, dance, and have fun with the correctional facility. They will be having their first ball. And so anybody who wants to have something productive to do, they can feel free to join us at the ball. There's another function that's occurring this weekend, Mr. Speaker, on Saturday, and that is the Fall Fest. The Department of Immigration, through its social welfare group, is having the Fall Fest on this Saturday. And it's going to be at the Hawkinsville Immigration Department. And so members of the community are invited to come out and celebrate with us. You can meet your diligent, committed, disciplined immigration officers, have a meal with them, have a dance, and if you want to ask a few questions, you can feel free to do that. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Further member statements?
That on the adjournment, the House will meet again on the Wednesday, the 4th of... Oh, sorry.
Honorable.
Sorry.
We're not there yet.
Okay.
There being no further member statements, appointment of select committees, instructions to select committees, discharge of select committees, notices for future meetings. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Angliston.
Thank you, Speaker. The opposition would wish to renew all the notices in the name of the opposition at this time.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to renew all notices in the name of the government at this time.
Thank you. Adjournment?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. I give notice that on adjournment, the House will meet again at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, 4th December 2019.
What are we going to be doing, do you know?
Is there a seconder?
We don't know anything.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the business of this House, or that the House do adjourn to Wednesday, the 4th of December at 10 a.m. As many as are in favor remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Final adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to advise the opposition that we'll give notice as soon as possible as to what we will be dealing, but it would be something that has already been laid. Final adjournment for Wednesday, the 4th of December 2019 at 10 a.m.
Second. Honorable members have been moved and seconded that the House adjourns to Wednesday, the 4th of December at 10 a.m. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The House stands adjourned to 10 a.m. the 4th of December, 2019.
All right.